Hey, it's Tim, Pickup Truck Plus SUV Talk, and I'm going to do it. I'm going to start this diesel up, and I'm going to take a short trip. I'm going to drive a mile to the store, a mile back. Tonight's the national championship game with Georgia versus TCU, and I need some hors d'oeuvres for the game. And this type of short trip is very much controversial online, and I want to address this because it's been brought up in comments many times. And I did some research. I talked to GM. I've done research online, talked to different people about it. And so let's talk about this. So this is the Duramax LZ0. It's a new 3-liter inline six. It replaces the LM2. It's got more torque, more horsepower, and it's got a little bit more reliability because they've made some little bit tweaks to it. They've learned, okay? And so the question came in from Kip, and I'm going to talk about his question here because I got an email. And I'll tell you what GM said, and then we'll just kind of discuss this. So his name is Kip, which is, by the way, Kip, that's a great name. Like, if I'm going to name my kid again, I'm going to name him Kip. Cool name. He says, I personally own 3 6.6 Duramax trucks. So he's familiar with diesel trucks with emission equipment, regeneration, and so forth. He recently was able to get an LM2 for work. So LM2 was a prior generation of this diesel. I really like the small diesel, but I drive it fairly long trips most of the time and not really any short trips due to the nature of his work. I like the small diesel so much that I bought a 2023 with the LZ0. So I already bought it. But his concern is he'd like to use the truck as a daily driver, but he lives only 5 miles from work. So on weekends and sometimes during the week, the truck would be driven much further, but currently he doesn't drive very much. And this is a big concern on the internet. The Googles will tell you. I Googled this, and I spent a lot of time because I've been covering trucks now for over a decade, and I've never actually heard this before. But when I bought this diesel, I started hearing this, which is great. It makes me a better journalist, it makes you a better consumer, because now I get to dig in. And you guys know on this channel how much I like to dig into stuff and how much, it causes fun times. Anyways, he's a little concerned about short tripping the truck this way. Never did this with larger diesels, but convinced myself the smaller diesels could handle this better. The smaller engine gets to its temperature pretty fast. He lives in the south. Is averaging 22.2 miles per gallon consistently on his 5-mile trip. And he's fine with that on a short trip, but long term he worries about the potential emissions problems with this type of prolonged use. So he wanted me to reach out to GM, which I did, because I thought it was a really interesting question, and he brings up some really solid concerns. The thinking has been on these heavy-duty diesels, especially when emissions started happening, like 2015, 2012, 2015, some of that time period. What we heard a lot for those initial diesels was problems with regen. So what regen is when the diesel engine, or the system, the computer, decides that this diesel particulate filter is too full, it'll idle a little bit higher and it'll burn off all that soot out of that diesel particulate filter. And the early ones, what my understanding of them, when I've driven, actually my father-in-law's got a 2007, and my brother's been driving for years, so when I've driven those vehicles, is regen stinks. It stinks, it smells out of the fans, and it's overall just an unpleasant experience. And so I've been getting a lot of questions as well on this engine about regen, what I've been smelling. And so I was like, all right, well, this is a so complex issue, a lot of stuff going on. So the idea here, let me back up a little bit, my head's all over the place at the moment, sorry, is that short trips destroy diesel engines, they plug up the DPF because you can't get through the regen process faster. The fluids don't heat up enough, and so you have this cold engine that's always cold that can't regen, and so you're going to plug up the lines, you're going to plug up the engine, lots of problems. Not a good deal. But this 3-liter inline six, like Kip had said, is much smaller. It heats up much faster. And the regen process, you're supposed to go through regen every gas tank. So I have 500 miles. Every time I fill up, I should go through regen. I can tell you, got 2,000 miles in this truck. I've smelled regen, I think, once. I think I was outside of Iowa, somewhere in Iowa, when I was driving along, when I bought this in Fort Wayne and drove it back. I think I smelled regen once. So the smell issue is not a big deal. Now, the short driving issue, that could be a concern. I have noticed in recent years, some of the newer diesel engines will actually tell you not to turn it off because it's going through regen. They actually won't let you turn it off, and so they let it complete. I know on some of the vehicles as well, some of the heavy duties, if you do like max towing for a long period of time, it actually won't let you turn the engine off till it cools it down to a certain temperature. So I think software has gotten better on this, which has created some improvements. But we have an exact quote. I have quotes. Sean, my friend from Senior Manager for Chevy Trucks Communications, I butchered his name last email, so we'll just go with Sean, this email. So he says, as for this question, the 3-liter LZ0 Duramax Diesel. Now, let me back up for a minute. Sean is Senior Manager at Chevrolet Truck Communications. So what he will do is he'll reach out to engineering and get engineering's feedback, then it sends it to me. He's kind of my conduit, my person I go to, my go-to person. And so he reached out to engineering and got the feedback. So this is guys like John Barta. This is guys that work on the diesel team at General Motors. They said the 3-liter LZ0 Duramax diesel includes the same protections any diesel engine from GM has in place. Ooh. For this particular engine, DPF warm-up is just a bit longer, though, and there may be more regens necessary in the first roughly 19,000 miles of the vehicle's life. So that's really interesting. I'd never heard that before. So for the LZ0, you have more regens in the first 19,000 miles than you will as you get more usage, as it gets, you drive it more. DPF warm-up is just a bit longer. Bottom line, really, is there's no change from the previous engine. So the LM2, LZ0, they have the same DPF warm-up time, a bit longer, 19,000 miles, more regens. Once you get past that, you have less regens. So drivers will see warnings to protect them and the truck from damage. And that's what I was talking about on the screen. It'll say, hey, regen going on, don't turn off your truck, let the truck finish its regen cycle. Now, of course, a customer can choose to ignore this message, naughty, but there's no scenario that a short trip would result in engine damage to ease you and your viewers' minds. Since I butchered that, let me repeat that. There's no scenario that a short trip would result in engine damage to ease you and your viewers' minds. So from GM, who built the engine, and their design engineers and their diesel team, there's no scenario with a short trip that would damage this engine. I think what we have going on here, if I were to think about this a little bit more and think all the way through, is that we have old school diesel thought and we have new school diesel thought. Now, when emission stuff came out and all this stuff changed, like 07, then it got put in 10, 12, 14, whatever, there was a lot of changes. And those guys experienced a lot of stuff that wasn't quite worked out right, okay? And now we flash forward to 2022, or this actually 2023 model year, this vehicle, and it is January, so it is 2023. We've learned a lot, and things have really changed. And I was thinking to myself, like, we would hear more of this problem, wouldn't we hear it more in Europe? Because Europe has been using diesel in cars, smaller diesel engines, and they've been driving for years. So, like, the Ram EcoDiesel, if I were to switch brands here for a minute, the Ram EcoDiesel, that, before they killed it, that was like the third generation of that diesel engine. It's been over in Europe for years and years and years. And they've used all sorts of cars and things. So I would think if we knew that was a problem in Europe, and we knew that was and we heard about it in the United States, and there was stuff in the owner's manual about it, I think it would be a real problem. But I think what's happening, in my viewpoint, again, I'm going to grab my helmet and put it on for the comments coming through, is I just feel like we have old diesel thought versus new diesel thought. And I think in this case, like I've said to you many times in different videos, this is not a heavy-duty diesel. This doesn't have anything in common with it. I actually think it's a bad thing to put Duramax on this because it just creates too much confusion. This is a more of a passenger diesel engine, if I were to call it that way. I think it makes more sense to call it that way. This is something you drive around town, you drive long trips, you do some towing with. I'm not going to tow 13,000 pounds with it. I mean, this is not that diesel. This is the new diesel, the new age diesel. So if to answer your question quickly, Kip, no, I won't worry about it. I'm not worried about it. I'm sitting here idling, and I'm going to go to the store a mile away and come back. So I'm not worried about it. I get in this truck, and I drive like a gas truck. I have a Tundra over there, actually for sale, by the way. I have the Tundra I had for last year for the channel, and I drive this diesel and that Tundra gas the same exact way. So I'm not concerned. GM tells me not to be concerned. GM warranted this engine, so if it goes kaput, that's on them, not on me. And so far, I haven't heard a whole lot of problems with the diesel now. Growing pains, initial stock, those things happen. But yeah, I've been pretty happy with it. So there's my thoughts on that, short driving the LZ0. And look at that. I took a 1-minute email and made it into like a 10-minute video. You're welcome. For more, check the videos over here, website down below. As always, thanks for watching. I will see you down the road. Go Dogs! Yeah!